Welcome everybody to today's webinar on technology for elopement and wandering. My name is Chanel and I'm a case manager at Olmsted County and board member with Minnesota NEAT Network and Education for Assistive Technology. Today's webinar will focus on leveraging technology to support individuals at risk of elopement and wandering. Our presenters will explore innovative solutions designed to enhance safety, promote independence, and provide peace of mind for individuals and their families. We have a few housekeeping pieces here. This will be a recorded and shared webinar on Minnesota NEAT's site. We have the Ask the Expert. We will have about 30 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. To submit questions, use the Q&A button that is located on the bottom of your Zoom screen. To turn on closed captioning, click on the CC Show Captions button on the bottom panel of the screen. You can adjust caption settings by clicking on the arrow in the right-hand corner of the Show Captions button. We are going to start our webinar with our first speaker, Anna McIntyre. She is the DHS Policy Lead for Assistive Technology. So Anna, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Chanel. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna McIntyre, and I am the policy lead for all of the technology-related services within DHS, as well as the remote support provision of the 27 services we have approved to be delivered either in person or remotely. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for Minnesota NEAT's first webinar of 2025. Today's presentation will focus on a discussion around a very serious topic, and that is elopement. Unfortunately, elopement is a common problem for people with intellectual disabilities. When most people hear the word elopement, their next thought typically involves children with autism or elderly with dementia, and there is definitely a good reason for that. Research has indicated that nearly half, 49% of children with ASD and 60% of people with dementia have eloped at some point, and many do so repeatedly. There are many reasons for this action or reaction, such as running away from an unpleasant situation or to a preferred place or object. Anxiety is a very common one, confusion, disorientation. People with communication challenges are at increased risk. Sensory overload, disruptions in routine, lack of supervision, which of course is a growing concern these days. Unmet needs, even just things as basic as thirst or hunger. Unfortunately, the list goes on. And there are many consequences of elopement as well, such as increased caregiver burden, the stress and anxiety around that, increased cost of care, increased negative emotions on behalf of the person and their caregivers and loved ones, serious injury, and even death. Drowning is actually now the leading cause of death for children with autism, which is a startling statistic. So as we eagerly await the spring's thaw, today's webinar couldn't be more timely or important. Elopement can be prevented, and today you will hear from our state's leading experts on technology solutions that can greatly reduce or prevent wandering, as well as technology that can help find a loved one if they do elope before it's too late. So I am very glad that you are here today for this very important conversation. And please, if you have any questions, don't feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kiri Tram. I'm the Director of Disability Initiatives at LifeWorks, and just want to welcome you here again today. I'll be emceeing, Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and we'll either get to them while our experts are talking, or we will get to them at the end for our Q&A session. Now, I would love to welcome Sue to the stage from Live Life Therapy Solutions to talk about assessments. And towards the end of today's session, she is also going to come back on stage to talk about sensory. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen. Great, I'm assuming you can see it, right?
Yes,
All
we
right,
can.
great, great. So I'm from Live Life Therapy Solutions. What I'm going to cover today is how we do assessments when we're looking at safety for elopement and wandering. And the first thing I wanted to preference is that a lot of times there are one or two things that are known about the person that are emergency needs, and those things don't need to wait for an assessment. And as Matt is going to show some of the assistive technology and things like that, those are things that if they are a known need, the case manager is able to approve those, and we wouldn't want to wait on anything that's an emergency need because elopement and wandering is such a serious issue, and families and people that are dealing with it are in crisis mode oftentimes. So I don't want you to think that everything needs an assessment, but we do see people with really complex needs, and so that's why it's worth walking through what we're thinking about and the questions we're asking and the assessment we're doing to get at even more of what's going on, so that we can help look at not just the band-aid to one problem, but at the whole of what might be going on. Like Anna said, there's a lot of dangers that go with wandering and elopement, and it's very stressful for people that are going through it with somebody that has a diagnosis of doing those things. Drowning is something that happens, and we have heard of it in the news, especially with kids with autism are very drawn to water. Traffic injuries, because people who are wandering are often afraid or don't know their surroundings, aren't checking for traffic, and are getting hit by vehicles as they're crossing streets. Exposure to elements, because it can happen at all times of the day and evening. And we've had really cold temperatures here in Minnesota lately, and encounters with strangers. So it's definitely something to take very seriously of all those things. Some of the statistics I had are the same as Anna's, the prevalence of children with autism wandering, and their predecessors of other kids in their family that don't do it. It is definitely something that goes with that certain diagnoses. Younger people with autism tend to wander more than people as they are getting older, and that can also be learning or the family or caregivers learning what to do and having the right strategies. Locations, people do wander from their own home, or they'll wander from a store or school trying to get back home. There's all different places that a person might be that the wandering might occur. And with dementia, wandering in dementia is driven sometimes by confusion. It might also be driven by attempts to do something that the person feels like they used to do. They might be thinking they need to get to work like they used to do when they were younger, or it might be seeking familiar people or places. And with wandering, we want to make sure that the family and the caregivers know what to watch for. So when we go to do an assessment, we're gathering information before we go out to see the person. We like to have a copy of the MNsure assessment if there was one that was done, and any support plan documents or goals that have been worked on at the county level. And then we gather information about the different diagnoses, because there are autism, dementia, Alzheimer's, there are mental health diagnoses and developmental disabilities also that wandering occurs with. And if we have background in the different diagnoses, that also helps lead our assessment so we gather the right information. We also want to look at the person's age and anything else that's going on, because if somebody has any vision, cognition, hearing impairments, those also can look like confusion, or they can be why somebody is wandering because they're having these changes and they're not understanding what's going on, and they might be going to get help in their mind. We want to know any physical changes and what the physical abilities of the person are, what the person's sensory system is like. So kids and adults that have wandering issues sometimes are doing it for a sensory reason, which I'll talk about at the end of today, more of what that looks like. But it could be that they're seeking something like water, or they're seeking some activity, or they're looking out at a playground and they want to get there. So it could be something that they're seeking that way. We also do want to understand if the person can communicate. We have a lot of people who wander that are not able to verbalize when they are lost, or when they are confused, or when they're out and about. And so it's important to know that and not miss something there. If we can teach the person how to communicate, or to have a device with them, or a way to communicate to others. And then we also want to understand what supports are there for that person. We want to help the person to stay living in their home environment, or their apartment, or assisted living, the least restrictive environment as we can. But we also want to make sure that we understand what support that the person has, and any caregivers or family that are going to be there that'll be learning to use this technology too, and to be watching for some of the things that we might see before somebody does decide to leave the home.
So, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We have a request to put it on presentation mode so it can be easier to
Oh, and I do have it on presentation mode.
see. Okay.
We
Oh,
also have
It's your note slide, Sue, that's showing.
Okay, so let me start over. So I unshared. I don't know how to make that happen.
So if you go back, I can try to walk you through it. Go back to where
Okay.
you were.
So I'll share again. Sorry about that. I'm glad you told me.
Okay, that's okay. And just to verify, when you're talking about an assessment, people are wanting to know if you're referring to the Min Choices assessment.
No. So we do want a copy of the mid-choices assessment. When I'm talking about an assessment is when an assistive technology provider or an occupational therapist in a clinic or in home are going through and doing the assessment. So kind of going through the person's abilities and disabilities and the reasons that wandering might be occurring. Okay, so now if I start from the
Okay.
beginning,
Yep, so try present from beginning.
so this time it's not moving.
Okay, instead of that, on the bottom right, you know where that
Yeah.
little slide bar is?
Yeah.
To the left of that, there's a smaller icon that looks like the present from beginning button. Click that.
Okay.
See if that works.
Hmm.
Oh, it might just be a bit frozen right now.
Yeah. We can do one of two things. We can let Matt talk about equipment first, or I can just do this without a PowerPoint.
How do you feel about doing it without a PowerPoint?
That's fine.
All right, you can also, if you'd like, have your PowerPoint up and it should start working again in a couple of minutes, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
All right. So some of the assessment of risks that we do when we're there doing an assistive technology assessment is that we want to do some information gathering when we're there with the person and with their family and caregivers, so that we pick the right technologies that we might want to try. So some of the things that we ask and we start looking at is the wandering behaviors that are being seen right now. And oftentimes when we come in, there's several things that are going on. And we'll want to know, is that occurring at night? Is it occurring during the day? Where are those tendencies? Are they from the bedroom? Is the person trying to leave through a door or a window or garage? So we want to do a lot of information gathering so we pick the right places, because not everyone is trying to open every door or every window. So we're trying to gather that information and the time of day that it's happening, and if people are up during that time or they're not up during that time. We also want to know if it's happening more when things are calm in the home, or when things are noisy, or if something's triggering it, or if there's warnings that the family or caregivers or person feels before it's happening. Also, sometimes the person themselves can be cued to get somebody before they leave, or to not leave on their own. And it could be like a verbal cue. It might be a stop sign that's at the front door. It might be a word that occurs when the door opens to remind the person. Those things can be very helpful for us to know in planning the right devices to pick for that person. We also want to make sure that the person can communicate, and if they can't, what things that the family is seeing or trends that they're seeing when the person does try to leave. Do they make any noises? Do they try to say anything, or they just go? And any triggers that look consistent. We want to make sure of these things because some people are trying to leave because of stress or stressful situations. Some people are leaving because they're attracted to certain stimuli, or they're feeling like they need something different. And some people are just that is just their tendency. And there is no warning signs. So if we understand some of those things ahead of time, it really helps us to pick the right tools. We don't want to create a lot of extra technology. We want people to feel free in their homes and things like that. We're just trying to add warnings and technology that are helpful. So we gather this information to help do that. We also want to look at the environment. We want to look at how the home is laid out, if it's rented or owned, because that'll help us to know if we're needing to attach anything to the home, if we're going to need to talk to the landlord and get permission to do so. We also want to look at any designs of the home that could be done differently, furniture being moved around, or if somebody's leaving their bedroom, any alerts that need to happen at certain doors of the home, or if it's getting in and out of bed, different alerts that could be at the bed. So we look at the home environment so we can see any of those modifying changes that we can make. And sometimes in a home, windows with curtains on them can help somebody to know that they're going to be staying inside. Just little changes like that can be very helpful. So that's why we look at the home environment also. When we're looking at the options for technology that Matt's going to show in a little bit, we do want to have the least restrictive option. We want the options to alert people in the best way for that person and for the family. Because our whole idea is for the person to stay living at home and to have their needs met in their home. And then if they do leave, that family can see that someone's coming and going and they can get to them safely so that they're not wandering past where it's safe for them. So we want those alerts to be the right kind in the right places. And we want to make sure the person tolerates it if they're going to be wearing something. So all of those things that we're exploring during the assessment are helping us to make sure of that and making sure that we don't miss something. And then also making sure that people know what they're getting prior to them getting it. So it's not a surprise, and that they can support the technology they're getting. And then lastly, there are some different like home modifications that we can look at too that are helpful. Sometimes it is for safety in the home. Like there are a lot of stairways that have open walls that people could fall or escape from. And so we can look at redesigning that and doing a home modification for safety. There's different doors and exits to the home. And so we're going to be looking at how to put alerts and things on those. But sometimes if there's double doors, that can help slow somebody down. If there is a sliding glass door and that's an extra door, there's ways to lock that since that's not an emergency exit to the home. If there's balconies or porches that need to be enclosed because there's a drop off into the backyard or onto concrete. So we're looking for any uh, types of emergency things if the person would go out that would be very dangerous to them. And then we also look at if the person has a backyard space, do they have a fence? Is it a non-climbable fence? And those types of things also. And then the strategies are going to be what Matt is going to talk about now. So I'm going to let him go next.
Sue, before we move on, would you mind answering a couple questions
Oh, yeah, no,
that are
that's no
about
problem.
this? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So people are wanting to know, I'll read a couple of them. They're all about the different types of assessment. So the
Yeah.
first one is the pre-assessment slide referred to a min-short assessment. What is the min-short assessment?
Yeah, so it's actually a min-choice assessment. It must have been a spelling error. So the min-choice assessment, when somebody gets on a waiver, is the assessment that's done pre the person going on to a waiver or when a waiver is being renewed. And that's something that the county does. And we often get copies of it. We'll go through some of the different barriers or safety concerns and things like that that are being needed for assistive technology. And so it can be really helpful for the person that's doing the AT assessment to have a copy of that so we can see some of the different concerns that came out to get the person on a waiver to begin with.
Thank you. And then
Yes.
also, would a behavioral specialist report also be helpful, especially if it addresses behavioral needs?
Yes, yes. So oftentimes when I'm doing my pre-assessment work, when I'm gathering information, if the case manager or the family lets me know that there is a behavior person involved, that can be very helpful. And with behaviors of wandering and eloping, we often work as a team together. So having releases for all of us to look at it jointly can be very helpful. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have some other questions coming in, but we'll save them for the Q&A. Thank you,
Perfect.
Sue. And next, we are going to welcome up Matt Hansen, owner and CEO of Mercaric.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning. My name is Matt Hansen. I am an assistive technology professional, an environmental accessibility specialist, and I own Mercaric Assistive Technology. Mercaric is one of the companies in Minnesota that can work with the assessments, provide all of the equipment and purchasing through the waiver, and do installations if needed. Starting today with some of the technology, I thought we'd go from kind of the high tech to the low tech. And the enabling technology, and currently called remote monitoring in Minnesota, is probably the most talked about and the most heard about. So we're going to spend the least time on it today. Remote monitoring technology really is a system of devices to help caregivers to, well, monitor activities within the home. We can use motion sensors, door and window sensors, different moisture sensors, sensors in each room of the house to know where a person is at any given time, to know if they're leaving, and really know what's going on in the home without the use of cameras. So it's a less invasive system than through use of cameras. One of the biggest benefits of the remote monitoring, when we really call it that, and the established companies, the Syngistics, the Simply Home, Night Owl, some of the other companies, is the documentation that is available through these. So if we do have a person with high needs, and we're going to want to relate that information to a therapist or use this for kind of helping the person move out onto their own in the future, getting rid of the he said, she said documentation and really having the facts is going to be very helpful. Going down a bit of a level, we have a lower level of monitoring, and we have the in-home PERS units. What you're seeing here on the left-hand side is the NOMO unit, Aura, Care has a similar unit. And now we're going to a much less expensive device, but it still has a monthly fee. These devices have the door opening and closing. They have motion detection, fall detection, call out pendants if the person needs it, but we're losing some of the functionality from the higher level remote monitoring system. But that's fine. In so many cases, we don't need to go to that higher level. This is where an assessment can be helpful at many times to help you determine which level of devices is going to be necessary. But as kind of an example, if we have a person, a senior kind of living in their own home, we simply need to give them a way to call out to a loved one. And a loved one wants to pull up an app on their phone and see how a person is doing at any given time. They can also call into the base unit here and have two-way communication. Generally, these are connected via Wi-Fi or via Ethernet cable to the person's internet. And again, we have as much functionality as you need most of the time without going to that higher level unit. Continuing to kind of go down, we have the off-the-shelf options like SmartThings and Ring. Both of these units are good now if we have caregivers in the home or occasionally outside of the home. We can have push notifications, text notifications sent if a door opening and closing. Also, we have now the availability to do some more in-home alerts. For example, the Ring system can be connected to, and so can SmartThings, but the Ring system very easily can be connected to an Amazon Echo device. And if a door opens, it can internally in the house say front door open, back door open. We can set these for different times. So either it only goes to a certain device for nighttime hours, a different device during daytime hours. And what we're getting rid of here is the monthly fees. So it's really a one-time fee for setup. Monthly fees and monitoring are available through these systems, but not needed. So we can have in-home alerts for when we need them and external alerts, a lower level of external alerts. The remote monitoring systems and some of these other systems will provide phone call alerts. These will be text notifications, push notifications. So you will have to kind of notice that your phone is there. But what it really adds is the internal alerts and the specificity of where an event is occurring. Now, please note that I'm going very quickly through each one of these systems, and I am not giving you all of the benefits of each system. As Sue had mentioned earlier, too, an assessment is not necessary. Elena Gallagher, who is unable to be on the call today, actually, I see her here, but who is not presenting today, is a great person, and you'll have her contact information at the end, I believe, if you want to get a completely unbiased opinion on some of these devices or which company is best to go to in Minnesota for your current needs. Feel free to reach out to Sue directly or myself directly or one of the other companies, but Elena is a good person to contact as well, as she has no affiliation. Cellular units, PERS devices, tracking watches, many of the different pendants, watches are available for tracking, geofencing. And what I mean by geofencing is we can put a perimeter around a certain area. And if the person leaves that perimeter, then the caregiver is getting a notification. There's also two-way communication available on many of these devices. So either the person who is supported can push a button and call directly to a caregiver or a response center, or the caregiver can drop in or call the device as well, depending on how we have the settings put, where they can say, "Hey, John, please stay where you're at. We're coming to get you." or John or Jane can call up the caregiver and say, I'm out of the house and I don't know where I am. Can you come and get me? Yes, I can come and get you. I can see directly on my application on my phone where you're at right now. Stay there. I'll be right there. Angel Sense and GeoBit here are just a couple more versions of this. Please call an assistive technology professional or somebody in the industry when choosing one of these devices. AngelSense or GeoBit, both are very popular devices. Both have very different features. So before deciding on a device, go ahead and give one of us a call or shoot us an email and say, here are my needs. Here is what's going on. Help me find out which device it is that I'm going to need. And the reason I say call an unbiased professional on these or somebody who works with a number of these devices, if you call Philips Lifeline, trust me, the person you support is going to need a Philips Lifeline. Same thing with GeoBit or AngelSense. If you call them, well, then that's definitely the best device in the world for the person you support. An unbiased person is going to say, okay, let's talk more about their needs and find the right device, not the one that we sell. The applications, this is just an example of some of the different applications for the people supported. It wouldn't be a Minnesota Neat webinar if we didn't talk about boundary care for just a moment. This can act as a elopement device with the GPS tracking, geofencing, but it also has some additional features such as the heart rate monitor, oxygen monitor, fall detection, a number of them have. But it's also going to be able to have preset alerts where if we are seeing a drop in oxygen level or a high increase in heart rate, then it can alert a caregiver and let them know that something's going on. If you want more information about any of these, please contact someone. Okay, now I wanted to go a little farther towards lower level technology. And the great things about lower level technology are first off, price. They're a lot less expensive to get. Second, they're easily installed by the person, the caregiver themselves, many times. One of the biggest challenges right now is wait times with assistive technology professionals. Trust me, we're doing the absolute best we can and going as fast as we can with giving each person the care and concern that they deserve. So if we are not waiting for an assessment or not waiting for installation from an assistive technology professional, an NPI, a provider with an NPI number, and the person can do it themselves, then it's obviously going to happen quite a lot quicker. So the in-home alerts on the left-hand side, we have simple point of contact alerts. In larger houses, these aren't going to work very well because if you're in the back of the house, you can't hear the ringing from the front door or otherwise. If there are multiple doors in the house, sometimes this is difficult because we don't know which door was just opened. But if we need a quick solution, then we can go ahead and put one of these on the doors. Sometimes these, and I'm going to mention this again with another product, sometimes we're going to give these to families in addition to other sensors or higher level systems that they have. Because throwing a couple of these things in a suitcase, if you're going on vacation with a person supported, you can go ahead and throw these things on the hotel room door or the guest room door very quickly. And now you've got some peace of mind while you're on vacation. The one on the right, what we see is the alert is plugged into an outlet, and it's not a lovely picture, but then the sensor, the contact sensor is connected to the door. We can move these different alerts around the house where they're needed. Sometimes we're really just worried about elopement during nighttime hours. So we'll put this in the parent's bedroom. If the door opens, the sound tones in the parent's bedroom, they're alerted. Easy, quick, done. Again, sometimes there are higher needs that need to be addressed, but if this is adequate for the situation, let's go simple. Another one of the great things about alerts that aren't connected to Wi-Fi and the internet, well, they can never lose Wi-Fi signal. The lower tech you go, the less challenges that you could potentially have in the future. That is not always the best way to go, but if it's going to suit your needs, why go higher? The next one, and I said I was going to talk about this again, what we have here on the left-hand side is a pressure pad. So if you step on this pad, it's going to sound the remote alert that you see sitting next to it on the left. This alert is movable. It's working through a radio signal. And anytime, again, you step on the pad, that alert sounds. It's not going to stop sounding until somebody says, yes, I hear that alert. I'm going to turn it off. Again, this is an item that I use in simply in people's homes. They're movable. We can put them in front of the front door. We can put them in a hallway. If a person's tendencies change, they were going for the front door one week, they're going from the back door the next week, we can just pick up the pad and move it. Again, it also is great if we're traveling. We can set this in front of a hotel room door. Or if the person supported is staying at multiple homes, then we can go ahead and move these from home to home. You can roll it up and take it with you. Now, what I will say is we don't want to pack this in luggage because it is a pressure pad, and if we end up creasing it, then that's going to be a problem. But if it's traveling on the road, this is a very easy supplemental item to use. Also, if we have a person who we're transferring or should not be transferring from bed to a chair on their own, or a person with dementia who forgets that they need help transferring as soon as they put their feet on the floor getting out of bed, the tone sounds. The one on the right is going to be a door system where we're putting this alert, the bar that you're seeing next to the door. The person supported now has to wear a wristband and with an alert on it. So if only that person goes to the door and opens the door, then it is alerted. The reason that we're talking about this is many times there are multiple people living in a home, and we don't need that alert going off every time somebody goes through the doorway, only a specific person. When you buy these packages, you can kind of see that they come with multiple different wristbands because we're going to want to change this and take it off the person now and again. You can order more wristbands. You can change the batteries in the sensor device that is worn. And now we just have the one person. You'll also see a door reset button because the alert is going to keep going off until it is recognized and taken care of. That's one of the biggest problems that I've always had with some of the point of contact sensors and then the plug-in sensor. Sometimes we become immune to those and we stop hearing that chime because it happens so often. Well, now we don't have that option. It's going to keep happening until we physically go and turn it off, which is also why the pager option is available. So we don't actually need to go to the front door. This is something for, say, a group home where a caregiver can carry that pager around with them. It can also be programmed to multiple alerts. There are these systems that can be set for doors, they can be set for pressure pads, they can be set for bed pads, chair pads, uh, nurse call buttons, all kinds of different things. So there are entire solutions. But now again, we're talking about radio signal and they're never going to lose Wi-Fi and we don't need a monthly fee. So is this always the correct option? No, not to keep pounding on it, but talk it through with an assistive technology professional to really figure out what the best solution is going to be for you.
Hey Matt, before
Yeah.
you go on to this slide, someone has a question specifically about the floor pad. Can I
Let's do
butt
it.
in with that? Okay. Do these come in multiple sizes? Can they have ignored zones such as bed legs if I place it under the edge of a bed?
The answer to the first question is yes, they do come in a few different sizes. Generally, the one that you're seeing on the screen right now is 2 feet by 4 feet. There are 3 feet by 3 feet. There aren't a lot of options, but there are a few. No, there are no ignore zones for these pads. Pressure is pressure. And you're not putting a carpet or rug over them generally is not going to be enough to set it off. So if you want to put this under something like that, it's fine. But no, we're not going to be able to put it under the legs of the bed. What I have seen many times is people will slide the pad under the bed during the day. So it's not getting constant pressure when people are walking around their room during the day. And then when a person goes to bed at night, they'll slide it back out from under the bed.
And
Was
Matt, I
that a
would just
good
add, this
question?
is Jameis. I would just add that a lot of those mats are super grippy, rubbery types of materials. So, it's hard for it to slip if it's on a tacky surface. So,
Thank you. Curie, was there another question?
Yes, sir. We have one more. Going back to the watch option, it said they would be able to detect seizure activity, but it's coming soon. Any idea when this feature is coming out?
Okay, that it must be an old slide. So that's a great question, though, to focus in on. And I don't want to take too much time here away from anyone else presenting. But when we say seizure activity, please notice that we're not saying seizures. We are saying seizure activity or symptoms of seizures. And many times seizures will present with rapid movement. It will detect with, or I'm sorry, it will present with a low oxygen level, a decreased or an increased heartbeat. So these are the things that we're measuring to measure the symptoms of a seizure, to say, yes, we think this person is having a seizure. Now, I note that very quickly, this is not an FDA approved device, which is why it's funded through the waiver, and we can't say that it is definitely seizure detection. But to answer the question quickly, it does have all of those different features that you had asked about.
Awesome, thank you. We'll save the
Yeah,
rest for Q&A because don't you worry, there's more.
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure that a lot of people here are going to want to jump in and help answer those questions as well. Excuse me. So I had mentioned the pager and the bed pad earlier. On the right-hand side, we're seeing another example of that plug-in alert, but now this time it's for a nurse call. So this model would be for a single person in a home who needs to call out to a caregiver in the home. Again, if we're going to go with multiple people in the home and multiple different alerts, we're going to need a different system. Excuse me. Okay, we went from low tech back to high tech here real quick. This is going to be my last slide, but it was actually requested of me to kind of mention this. Now, I have not worked with magnetic lock doors personally before, and I would be willing to bet that absolutely no assistive technology professional here in Minnesota has installed one of these. But there are a number of different homes that I have been in that have magnetic door lock systems. These are going to be meant for extreme situations. These are not the go-to. What you're going to use is much like locked facilities. A key card or a numerical keypad will then disengage the magnetic lock on the door, and you're going to need a variance to be able to use these in the houses. The reason that I do mention these are because we need to be able to easily unlock a door from the inside. All able people must have the ability to unlock that door. So if we are in a group living setting with very high needs, very high elopement, then it has been in Minnesota deemed appropriate before to have locked doors from the inside. enable to have those locked doors from the inside, then we are going to need that availability to unlock the doors very quickly, hence the key cards and the numerical systems. If you want more information on whether this is appropriate, this is definitely something that I believe we would need to do an assessment with, and really flesh out and define exactly what the needs are, why this has been done, and what has been tried in the past. I believe that DHS is going to want to know all of the other things that were tried before we went to magnetically locking the door. If this is the case, mine and other companies, if this needs to be installed and these door opener companies don't have an NPI number, we can work as a pass-through and help get this funded and build, if it's appropriate, through the waiver system. But I'm not going to be just the one who says yes. This is going to be a longer conversation. Again, Sue had mentioned it and another had mentioned it, least restrictive possible. Well, this isn't the least restrictive possible, I guarantee you that. So let's try everything else we can try first, but if this is deemed needed, let's have that conversation. I'm going to throw it back to Kiri, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Next, we are going to have Jameis from Minnesota Star, and I will also be presenting with him briefly. Take it away, Jameis.
Let me pull up my slides here. Everybody see that?
Not yet.
Hang on. Gotta hit the share button. That's important.
There you go.
There you
You're
go.
good.
Awesome. All right, well, welcome everybody. I am Jameis Warenberg. I'm an assistive technology professional with the Minnesota STAR program. I'm going to quickly go over the STAR program and talk to you about how you can actually get devices in your hands to be able to loan out and try some of this equipment that Matt talked about. I am going to also preface my presentation that this is very quick and dirty. I'm only presenting like maybe 3 or 4 items that we have within our library. And I just encourage you to reach out to me or any of the professionals that are presenting today if you're looking for something more specific. So quickly, the Minnesota STAR program, for those of you who don't know who we are, stands for a system of technology to achieve results. We are Minnesota's federally funded Assistive Technology Act program. And what that means is that this program is available in every single state, including our 6 U.S. territories. Currently, the STAR is housed in the Department of Administration in St. Paul by the Capitol. We are a state entity. We are non-biased, like Matt talked about. And so when we talk about technology, we're looking at all technology. We're not just looking at specific vendors. We provide services to all Minnesotans with or without a disability. If you have a disability, great. We don't require proof of that at all. But if you don't have a disability and you just want to learn more about assistive technology, we are a program that allows you to be able to do that. There are no costs for our program services. And so quickly, I'll kind of go over what our services are. We can provide device demonstrations on assistive technology. We can provide device equipment loans, both short-term and open-ended. Short-term is for 45 days or less. So think of us like a library, but instead of books, it's assistive technology. And as our devices age, they get moved into our open-ended loan program where there is no due date for those for that equipment. These are typically older devices that have aged out, they're discontinued, no longer in service, maybe they have no more support from the vendor. So these are going to be older devices, typically worn, and they're available for as long as you want them. We're also just a big hub for information and assistance. You could reach out to us with any kind of assistive technology question. And if we don't know the answer, we're all connected on this call. And so we can reach out to each other and be able to get you in the right direction to hopefully get your question answered. And then we provide training. So we can come out just like I'm doing today, talk to you about the STAR program, our services, and what we can do for assistive technology for individuals. So demonstrations, why are they important? They really allow you to be able to compare features in a non-biased way, be able to demonstrate maybe two devices that are different vendors, but the same function, be able to test the buttons, be able to see how you're going to be able to access those buttons. Not everybody can just push things, right? So we need to look at different ways of how we're going to access that. And so we can have that during a demonstration and talk about those things. The biggest thing is that it really helps with decision making. So when you're torn between all these different options and it's just overwhelming, a demonstration can really kind of hone in on the devices that will work, look at the different features, and then allow you to make that decision yourself. Again, short-term loans are for 45 days or less. Again, it provides you with decision making. So once, maybe you've done a demonstration, you want to be able to loan out this equipment to try it in your environments. A short-term loan can assist with that. But it also can be very helpful to individuals who maybe help people with disabilities in other ways. So like occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers, somebody who just wants to know more about assistive technology to be able to help others. You can check out equipment on your own and learn more about equipment and how it works so that you have a better understanding of how that will help somebody with a disability. Maybe it provides a short-term accommodation for somebody who already has assistive technology. So maybe a speech communication device breaks, but we have that same speech communication device in our lending library. They can check that out while their device is getting repaired or replaced. So it provides like a bridge to be able to continue to have the equipment that they need to be independent. And then I already talked about the open-ended loan program. So here's our lending library website, mn.at4all.com. When you go to this website, it's going to have different categories that help kind of determine what technology is available in those different categories. So vision, hearing, speech communication, daily living. It will have a picture of the device, it will have a description of the device, and the ability to check out that device on the library website. So pretty painless. And if you have questions about that, you can reach out to me and I can give you some instructions on how to do that. Just quickly kind of going over some of the equipment that we have in our library that's available for elopement and wandering. Angel Sense is one of those products that we have. I will put a caveat out there that this is not hooked up to any service. This is just to kind of look at the device to see, how it's worn, how big it is, what are the different options that come with the kits. The reason why it's not hooked up to services is because it is personalized to each individual. And so for us to be able to have a piece of equipment that is loaned out to multiple people throughout the state, it's just a nightmare to be able to have it hooked up to service. However, you can reach out to Angel Sense after you've kind of looked at it and seen all the different features. And then they would be able to walk you through how to personalize that for an individual. But an Angel Sense is one of the most popular items for elopement and wandering. It has a safeguard GPS, so you can monitor throughout the day with live tracking maps, and you can set up geofencing like Matt talked about, putting a perimeter, a fake fence around an area. And when that person leaves that area, it's going to alert the caregiver to wandering. It's going to have proactive alerts, so wandering alerts, different unique alerts that you set up and customize to that individual, as well as any kind of transit alerts. So as they're going to school, you're monitoring their whereabouts and making sure that they get to school safely. It does have a two-way or a one-way voice calling speakerphone. It does have an SOS button. So if that person is feeling lost, they can press the SOS button and we'll connect them to help. It has voice messaging and it can automatically be picked up for somebody who doesn't know how to answer a call. So there is the ability to have that two-way conversation with somebody through the watch. It has a search and rescue tool, so you are able to share live locations with emergency professionals, as well as a photo that you program into the watch, so that you have a photo to share with responders to be able to look for this individual. And then it has a couple other features here, safe ride monitoring. So again, the live tracking, it'll give you an estimated time of arrival. It can show speeds of vehicles that are transporting your individual. It has also, it's just kind of well-being features built into it. It has a step counter, it has fall detection, and you can program it for pill reminders as well. So the cost for this is $300 for the kit, and it's a $50 a month monitoring service fee. And I did just check recently, and they have a current deal that you can get a free kit. So that's eliminating the $300 right off the bat.
Seamus, would you be able to speak to with the Angel Sense? I know we've had a few questions about concerns with the two-way speaker option when somebody is in school.
Yeah, I saw that
Being able,
question.
yeah.
I don't have an answer to that question. That's not my expertise, but I'm hoping maybe Anna or Alina. I don't know if Alina's on the call now or not.
But within that app, you're able to enable and disable that feature,
Okay.
the caregiver too. So I did want to share that, but then yeah, maybe
Anna,
Hannah
you
can
came
speak
on.
more
Did
to
you
that.
did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted, there was another question that I answered a little bit ago too, that I was not aware of that requirement or limitation, but I do work with some folks from MDE on a cross-agency work group around technology. So I've already put it on my to-do list to ask about that when we have our next meeting in 2 weeks. So I will definitely check into that more.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
All right, continuing on, unless there's any more questions, you guys, any more that I can quickly answer?
We had one asking if STAR goes into homes to assist people in learning how to use the technology or do trainings.
We don't. We're strictly a lending program. The state prevents us from going into people's homes. But in that aspect, then I would be referring them to like Live Life Therapy Solutions with Sue or Mercaric with Matt, Matt with Mercaric, as they are able to go into homes and provide that level of service. All right, moving on. So Matt talked about a couple of different kind of motion detectors and different sensors that are out there. In our library, we have a wireless motion detector alert. This will detect motion and provides a ringtone up to 58 choices and 5 adjustable volume levels. And it can be placed near a door or exit. And when the motion is sensed, it will alert you to that motion. So just a kind of a gentle way of showing that somebody's near a door or an exit point that you want to be alerted to. This is much more reasonably priced. So around $23 for a kit that includes the main unit and one sensor. And then you can add multiple sensors at added cost. The third reality is Zigbee door and motion sensors. This can be hooked and worked with the Amazon Echo, but that Echo needs to have a Zigbee hub. And the reason why Zigbee is so important is because when the Wi-Fi goes down, Zigbee will still work. And so it doesn't need a Wi-Fi. It does need it to set it up initially, but once it's set up, if that goes down, it's still working. It's still sensing when that sensor is broken or there's motion detected. These sensors are about $20 per sensor. Matt talked about the Ring doorbell. This is great for alerts to any movement in front of the camera. It can be placed inside or outside. These are designed to be a doorbell for outside, but with my dad, for instance, who needs help with supervision in the home, we've installed these in the home to be able to monitor within the different rooms. And so it just allows you to know when a loved one arrives home or leaves the home. A great feature about the camera is that if somebody does elope, you can kind of see, or you can see the direction that they headed through the camera. It does have the ability to have a two-way conversation through the device. So you can say, as your loved one is approaching the front door, hey, I see that you made it home. I'll be home in 10 minutes. So you're able to have that two-way conversation. It's pretty easy to install. It's just a matter of mounting it, charging it, and downloading the free app that comes with it. And this also can be paired with the Amazon Echo. The cost for this is about $100. Matt talked about a mat alarm. We do have a mat alarm. So when pressure is placed on this mat, an alarm will sound. So this could be placed by the bedside, so that it can alert a caregiver when somebody's getting out of bed. It can be placed near doors, to alert caregivers of an exit. Again, it's easy installation, laying down the mat, plugging it in, connecting it with sensor, and the alarm. So cost for this is about $210. I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about some of our recreational equipment to keep people occupied, so they don't feel the need to elope. So we have lots of different equipment out there that will help keep kiddos or adults engaged. So we have a major bubbles. This is could be mounted to a wheelchair. It's a bubble machine that can just keep kids entertained for a while. We have the Hori Flex controller, which allows you to switch adapt a Nintendo Switch, so that if you're not able to push those tiny little buttons in a Nintendo Switch, this will allow you to be able to have bigger switches that will do the functions of those buttons. We also have a Give It a Whirl, which is like a pinwheel on steroids. So this can be mounted to a tabletop or a wheelchair as well. And the wind can interact with those pinwheels to give stimulation and entertainment. And then Sue's going to talk more in detail about sensory, but I just wanted to highlight some of the sensory items that we have in our lending library that will help calm and soothe individuals who are experiencing anxiety, keep them entertained with these awesome pieces of equipment, and just be able to provide that stimulation that they need. So next part of our presentation, Kiri is going to talk more about adaptive swimming, but I just wanted to throw out a few statistics. I know Anna did as well. Approximately 49% of children with autism spectrum disorder have attempted to elope after age 4, with 26% missing long enough to cause concern. Of those who went missing, 24% were in danger of drowning. And then between 2011 and 2016, 17% of reported autism spectrum disorder wandering and elopement causes in the US resulted in death. So of those 71%, of the 17% reported in death, 71% of those fatalities was due to accidental drowning. And then it is proven that children in formal swimming lessons can reduce the risk of drowning by 88%. And Kiri's going to talk about some techniques for adaptive swimming.
All right, thank you, Jameis. I'm also emceeing, so I'm just trying to get stuff set up on my end. Perfect. Okay, hi everybody. Again, I'm Kiri, Director of Disability Initiatives at LifeWorks, and I wanted to talk a bit about adaptive swimming because in addition to all of this assistive tech we're talking about to prevent elopement and wandering, we also want to make sure we are empowering people to be safe if they do get to water, which we do want to prevent, right? But if they do get to water, we want to make sure that they are as safe as possible. And like Jameis talked about, we can reduce the risk of drowning by 88% just by doing swim lessons. But swimming lessons are not accessible to everybody. I have autism, and I know going to a pool is a super overwhelming experience to me, and it is to a lot of other people on the spectrum. But I wanted to talk a bit about how to go about that, whether it is adaptive swimming lessons or kind of tailoring regular swimming lessons. But just to start with, swimming lessons are a must. We shouldn't just assume because someone has a disability that they aren't able to swim. There are actually a lot of level 2 and level 3 people with autism that I know who are amazing swimmers, but it took swimming lessons to get them there. So here are some tips. Start with sensory integration. So don't just toss them into swimming lessons right away. Help them kind of get the feel of it. Seek out a pool that matches your child's needs. And again, I'm saying children because most of these incidents are with children. Engage before swimming lessons begin. So before even starting swimming lessons, maybe start by just visiting the pool or wherever you're doing it at. Do that a few times. Really kind of get the hang of going there, seeing the location, experiencing that, maybe just dipping toes in the water, that kind of stuff, before actually getting into the swimming lessons. Visualize the expectations and location. And this is a huge one. Be consistent in instruction. I'm sure a lot of us on this call know how important consistency is, and that's the same thing with swimming and swimming instructions. Also, one thing to remember around this being consistent, just because someone is a really good swimmer at the pool doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a really great swimmer in a lake or in a river. So carrying over those skills to different areas and practicing them in different areas is important as well. And a note that CDCS, or Consumer Directed Community Supports, and CSG, Consumer Support Grant, can pay for adaptive swim lessons. The next one is create some water rules. So as we're starting to get comfortable around water, make those rules. And I know it can be hard to reinforce rules sometimes, but again, remain consistent. So here are just some examples. Never swim without an adult or a caregiver with. You can swim here, you can't swim there. I think that's a super important one. Again, just remaining consistent. I know we can't force people to do things. Everyone's going to do what they want, but remaining consistent in these rules. And for some people, creating routines around swimming can even prevent them from getting in the water without completing that routine in the first place. Now, that doesn't work for everyone, but I have seen it work for multiple kids. If they have a very specific routine that they do before they get into water, at least put their whole body into water, that can prevent them from fully getting into the water. They might still be putting their hands or their feet in, but they won't fully get into the water without completing that routine. And then communicating sensory needs. Sue's going to talk a lot more about this, but water is incredibly regulating for those of us who have autism. It is fun, it's soothing, it's just everything anyone could love. So it's not surprising that so many people that are autistic or have ASD are drawn to water. So work with the individual and their team to find safe ways to get that same regulation they need and communicate when they need it. And here are just a few little examples that you could do that are safe. So bathtubs and hot tubs, supervised. Water tables, backyard or public splash pads, a warm water bottle or a misting bottle. Those are some examples. And lastly, just getting to know your neighbors and local emergency responders. Having that community around who knows the person who is at risk of elopement or wandering can be huge in reducing that immediate emergency response and significantly reduce the amount of time to the person being found. If your neighbors and the people around you know the child or person who is eloping and wandering, they can go up to them, kind of redirect them back home, or at least alert you that they see them and maybe kind of follow them from a distance and keep an eye on them to make sure they're safe while you're getting to the scene. All right, now I'll pass it back to Jameis.
Awesome. So just wanted to give you some resources for adaptive swimming. Obviously, the Autism Society of Minnesota has a great search feature for swimming lessons. Courage Kenny Rehabilitation Institute in Golden Valley and Stillwater have large pools that are heated and nice temperature that offer one-on-one adaptive swimming lessons. You might want to check with your local YMCA or YWCA to see if they offer adaptive swimming lessons. But they're also a great resource. I know my local YMCA has a splash pad. So if you're looking for alternative ways to get that water stimulation and not have a deep pool, my YMCA has a nice, awesome splash pad. Brooklyn Center has adaptive. This next bullet point has just all the different types of adaptive swimming organizations out there. So Brooklyn Center has the Adaptive Aqua Buddies class, Swim Possible, FOSS Swim School, Clownfish Swim Club, Swim for Life, and Education for All Squid School. These are all organizations that offer adaptive or the ability to adapt to an individual specific swimming lessons. And then I found this awesome resource called Water Safety with Miss Dana. They are based out of Roanoke, Virginia, but they do offer virtual classes that focuses on the safety concepts around water with a focus towards autism. But again, it's the consistency piece that Kiri was talking about. Where there is water, I will wait, is kind of the focus of her curriculum. Also highlighting that cell phones down so kids don't drown. So teaching caregivers and loved ones to put the cell phone down and be able to supervise children when they're swimming. And then just getting parents and CPR and caregivers CPR certified. So that's part of the curriculum. They do sell a kit that you can use daily in and around water. It comes with a children's book on water safety with some colored tape that says wait here and close, so that you're kind of giving the instructions of where you want an individual to be so that we're safe with water. And then it has a little cute waiting whale mat that you can have the child stand at before they get into the water. So I thought that was a great resource. With that, I'm just going to quickly throw out my contact information, and you can always reach out to me with any questions regarding assistive technology. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jameis. Now we are going to welcome Sue back up to talk about sensory.
Great. I don't know if I should try to share my screen, but I'll try one more time.
Yeah, give it a go.
Because I have some pictures. Do you see it?
Yes, that looks
Okay.
absolutely
All right.
perfect.
I put it on a different mode.
Love it.
It would show them. All right. So occupational therapists do sensory testing, or you might call it sensory inventories, in school or in clinics, and at Tech for Home and Live Life Therapy Solutions, we can do that also. What we look at is that a person, adult or child, that has sensory seeking needs or sensory needs in general are needing them to be regulated. And sometimes that is why people are leaving, or what's helping them to draw to the outside is they might see something that they're missing, that they are seeking in their bodies, that's not in their home or not readily accessible in their backyard. And so what we're trying to do is figure those things out, and then helping the families to understand those too, and helping to understand what helps a person to be regulated and get them what they need. So that also can help us to build those spaces in the home. What we really saw during COVID is that people lost all of their sensory spaces for a while because they couldn't get to where they used to go to do that. Might be a pool for swimming lessons. It might have been a clinic that had a swing or a park. And all of a sudden people were stuck at home and they didn't have their sensory needs met. And we really realized during that time how important it is to have these sensory needs to be able to be met in the home too. So we can look at pop-up spaces like this one here, so that someone can have a calming space, someone can have an alerting space, and it can also be away from others. So we are looking at things like this that the waiver can pay for. We can look at, if I can get this to move forward now, water play spaces in the home, in the basement, or in the backyard or outside. So again, that person is in safe ways, being able to play in water, be in water. Because we also do see people going into the bathroom and starting the shower, over flooding the bathtub and things like that. And so we want to look at what are safe ways in that home for that person to be able to have access to water. And then safety in the community. So if it's young children, we can look at adaptive strollers that can be paid for either by waiver, or if the person has the physical positioning needs, then sometimes MA can pay for those. Different types of wagons. There's all different types of really fun tools out there now that help get people outside, but in safe ways. And then also using activities where the child and their family learns to hold on to a device or a rope or things like that together. So the child doesn't need to be strapped to it, but can be actively learning that we hold on together as we're walking outside together so that we stay safe. So some of those things are like habits and having some low tech devices that are very safe to be able to do and to be able to use. And then for people that are older, positioning equipment. So it also is looking at like how we design spaces. So I have a lot of people who have lift chairs and can get up and down by themselves, and positioning equipment and activities that the person wants to do in front of them can help that person stay occupied longer, not having to get up or to try to leave or to be wandering around without mission. And then having the alerts like they were showing by the bed, so that if somebody is getting up, that you do know that they're getting up and they're moving around. Some other positioning devices for kids can be high-low activity chairs, or what they're called, so that we can help people get positioned up to the table. I often hear like a lot of kids or adults too that have wandering won't sit long enough to be able to eat, but if they have the right tools, the right chair, the right positioning, and the right height, oftentimes we can help people be encouraged to stay seated during the mealtime. And so providing those positioning equipment devices can be something that we look at as we're looking at what sensory needs that person has. And then safety beds. So we do have a lot of kids that we have tried everything with, even including like removing everything from their room except for their bed and adding door alerts and door alarms. And they're still not safe to stay in bed at night. And families are staying up sometimes 24/7 or sleeping in front of the child's door. There are safety beds that are available, and there's all different kinds, and they are very nice looking, and a lot of kids do like to have that enclosed space. We look at these as, you know, after we've looked at everything else, but this is an example of a sensory bed. It can be open on the sides like this. Ideally, when someone really needs the sensory bed at night when they fall asleep or as they're going to bed, the sides will be shut. And so the person is zipped into there, but we make sure, and the family makes sure that that is soothing to the child. Some of these do have sensory in there into their space so that they have calming music or calming lights, things like that. Safety beds are things that Gillette, the OTs and PTs can assess. Our program has assessed, outpatient clinics have been assessing, and home care to be able to have MA look at paying for a safety bed if there's a need for that. Another reason that safety beds are important are for seizures, or if a child is moving around in bed. You can't put a child in a hospital bed. They're going to get stuck in the bars of the bed, and things like that are not safe. And so these are an alternative to that, and looking at that. And then they also do make some that are portable for trips, vacations, and camping. Non-climbable fences. So kids and adults that have wandering and elopement, they can be really fast. So we're never saying that someone should be unsupervised, but even with supervision, they can take off from a backyard. They can take off from a home really quickly. And it is important that everyone has space that they can get to, that they can be outside and that they can be safe. And so non-climbable fences are fences that don't have any way you can climb over them or out. So you see this one is everything's on the inside of the fence, so you can't use anything to climb as a step on the way out. And then these fences are built all the way down to the ground, so no one can go out underneath a fence. Like sometimes you'll see like a gap. So these fences are created for people that really have these needs and need to be able to get outside in a safe way. And that is something that the waiver has been able to pay for when there's a need for that. And then they do have gates. So if there is a gate, then also we'd add an alarm for that and sometimes a camera so that, again, if someone does open that, the caregivers, even though they're out there, will know about it. All right. We'll stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, you're welcome.
Now we are going to get to our Q&A. So panelists, feel free to come on your videos. Thank you. All right, we have a bunch of questions. I will start at the top. Sue, some of these will be for you. Other folks, feel free to hop in. So the first question came up when you were talking about assessments, Sue. This one says, I would like to hear your thoughts on how to write this information in someone's paperwork. We've had individuals at risk. We've placed alarms on the doors and windows. They have had an elopement protocol and have eloped when their staff was using the restroom. We received a correction order. What does DHS need in order to not issue us a correction order when someone at risk elopes? So Anna, feel free to hop in on this one too.
That I'm afraid I'm not able to answer because so there's DHS policy and then there's DHS licensing, and I work for DHS policy, so I'm not I can't speak to the licensing requirements, I'm afraid. Sorry.
I can just mention that I usually have, when I see something like this, more questions than answers. So, what type of facility is it? What license and, what other things are in place to help support the person so that they, if a staff leaves for a short period of time, we can engage in what other devices might we be able to put into place beyond just a door alert. So there's so many more pieces to it, but it certainly is worth talking with not only your licensor about, but also an AT professional that may be able to give you some additional ideas and items that could be put into place to help the person. What I love that this group is doing is not only giving you the devices, but giving you resources on how to keep the person engaged so they don't want to consider eloping.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. All right. Now we have some questions about what is and is not approvable. Right. So are these beds? Oh, go for it, Matt.
No, go ahead and finish, Carrie.
Are these beds, such as the cubby bed, covered by the waiver? I've been told no in the past.
So
And then
usually,
some other folks are saying, yes, I have had it covered.
usually we go to medical assistance first on those because we do get that covered in that direction for the most part. So Gillette has done it, we've done it, other therapists have done it. So I usually would go through a durable medical equipment provider and go the medical assistance route first. And then if we're denied, so sometimes the sensory component of the bed is denied and we've had the waiver or the family pay that portion, but the bed itself got paid. So I would go that direction first before waiver because it is an item that MA can consider.
Awesome. Thank you. And then it looks like Kathy chatted a bit in the chat as well about that. Thank you. All right. Another one about, now we have one about climbable fences. Non-climbable fences, I think could potentially be an issue with the fire marshal for licensed settings. Can someone expand on that?
You still have to have a gate. So you have to have gates on those fences. So that's come up before that question. And so that's where the fire rules are, is that you do have to have a gate. And because of that, we do have alerts put on those gates. And also you can have camera there too. But you do have to have gates on the fences. You can't have no opening to get out.
Thank you. Right, and then suggestions for removing seatbelts, eloping or engaging in dangerous behaviors in a car. And a comment on that was, can anyone talk about some more low-tech interventions?
So I'll just talk about cars because we do help a lot of people in OT and PT in clinics and hospitals and in home look at adaptive car seats. So if the person's not too tall or too big, there's a lot of different adaptive car seats that we can look at and getting the person for that. And then if the person needs an adaptive buckle because they are getting out, there's risks and pros and cons with those because the person's not going to be able to get themselves out in a car accident or an emergency. And so parents and caregivers, or if someone's in a setting where they're in a group home or something like that, are going to have to make some choices and decisions about that because it helps keep the person safe in the car. But when there's an emergency, someone has to get them out. Waiver doesn't usually pay for those tools and they might be considered restrictive, but they're very important tools. So we're able to show caregivers and families where you get those, how you use them, and then that's their choice to do that. But we can't always recommend the waiver pay for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. And that kind of brings us into another question. Matt and Sue, I think specifically for you. I love Mercaric and Live Life Therapy Solutions, but I'm seeing a lot of assessments that include items that we have to deny as case managers. Just wondering if this is noted to a person during the assessment that not everything may be approved for waiver funding. It would be useful if they hear it at the time and not just when the case management agency is reviewing the recommendations and deciding if it can or cannot be covered by the waiver.
We do always let people know that it does need to go through the case manager. In our reports, we usually do show things that are usually approved, but we don't guarantee that they're going to be approved. And then we have our ones that are traditionally not approved, but we're letting the family know about because they might purchase them on their own. We also do education when we see things that could be approved by the waiver, because every county might not know now that there are more things that are approvable. So we will educate too together, not in front of the person, but with the case manager on email or phone. And sometimes that does change the answer. But I do always tell people that we can't assume that these things are going to be covered.
Awesome.
And we do write that in our reports too. We do reviewing the case manager.
I'd
Could
like
you
to
all give
touch on
some-
this for just
Yes,
a
please,
second,
Matt.
too.
If you could give some examples also, that'd be great.
Well, no, I really appreciate the question, and this is something that we think about quite a bit. Yes, at Mercaric, every time we're in there and we're talking about technology, we make very sure to let people know that we are not the ones who approve items, and just because we suggest an item does not mean that it's going to get approved. When we get some of the pushback that we get from case managers, and understandable, and is this is not why you were there necessarily for the evaluation. I completely understand that. But as an assistive technology professional too, if we see something and we see a challenge that can be addressed, we want to address that in the report. Sometimes the referrals that we get are very specific and they talk about that, which is wonderful because then we have the ability to key in on some of these situations. Many times, honest to goodness, it says in the reason for referral box, because I want an assessment. Okay. But that leaves it open a little bit. So in the reports as well, you'll notice when we're sending these over to you, there may be recommendations for shower seat or some of these different things. And we're going to put in the referral, this item is DME and should be requested through MAMC before being considered by the waiver. So there's that. There are also items that are specifically requested by the family that they will say, will you put this in? Yes, because they have requested it. We put this in, and then we also note in that section, this has been specifically requested by the family for discussion as well. So I think the biggest part is, and then I guess the last thing that I will say is kind of in that question, and I may have read it incorrectly, but it gets me every time. It says you put items in here that are not approvable by the waiver. Well, what kind of Sue may have been alluding to a little bit later, in your county, you have been instructed not to approve these things by the waiver. There should be parity between all counties. Unfortunately, there is not. So what may not be approved, or you have been told by a supervisor or directed not to approve in one place, it's very commonly being approved right across the street. Um, we want to work with you. We absolutely do. And if you ever, and Sue will probably say this too, if you want us to kind of not be the bad guy, but speak to the person again and say, this is not going to be an item that is going to be approved, that's fine. I'm more than happy to be the person to talk them through that and break it to them. But we are going to suggest what we find is the best thing for the people. And then we'll kind of discuss that afterwards. Thank you for allowing me to talk about that. And
People
Thank you,
can
Matt.
appeal too. So giving a formal denial is super important, because people can appeal because there are differences in each county. And so people have appealed and been able to get things too.
Yes. Thank you both. And just one more note on that. If someone doesn't necessarily need to appeal yet, but does want to reach out to discuss more, can they reach out to both of you? Awesome, because that was a question.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then Anna, I'd like to throw this one to you. There are a bunch of, and we are at time, so I think this will be our last question, then we can wrap it up. Anna, there's a bunch of questions around funding for adaptive swim lessons, particularly with like CFSS, unbundling of CDSS, etc. Could you speak a bit to that?
Yes, so I do work within traditional waiver services, but within Disability Services Division, there are other teams that work on CFSS and CDCS. So I was able to reach out to the CFSS team and ask about adaptive swimming lessons, and they said that they are not covered. And then CDCS, I know they are covered, but then there's the question of whether there's like this parental responsibility cost share component to that. So that part I'm going to look into a little bit more. So I have a little bit of work on my to-do list to some things to talk about with MDE, CDCS, and then CFSS, just kind of making sure that, and I also wasn't aware until about a week ago that monitoring technology wasn't covered by under CFSS for people under 18. That was news to me. So, potentially, I can't promise anything, but potentially there'll be more information in the future as we're able to collaborate and discuss these things further.
Thank you. And just one more note on adaptive swim lessons. I highly recommend if you are looking for swim lessons specifically, reach out to your city or county programs, like the rec programs. A lot of them will do maybe not necessarily adaptive swim programs, but small or one-to-one groups, and that can be just as good. And they'll often do it at a free or reduced rate if you financially qualify for it.
Great.
All right, and any last words from our panelists?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.